child is a human right.
A child needs to be emotionally and socially ready to go to school. The learning will happen between the age of 0 to 6, or you can say the acquiring of knowledge happens between the age of 0 to 6. So the children normally go to school by the age 5, turning 6, that's when they go to grade R. So what we try and do is we try and get them ready, socially and emotionally. They need to be independent, they need to be confident. This morning we did music and movement, so the little ones will be sitting with us and they will participate with whatever we are doing. So they get exposed, incidental learning, they get exposed to what the bigger ones are doing, which just helps their development in a very big way.
And with the growing number of children, it is becoming more and more challenging with time, which is why it is so important for parents to ensure the early development in a child is nurtured and to eventually provide them with the skills and readiness for primary. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I will remember. Involve me and I will learn.
Okay, development is the gaining of skills in all aspects of a child's life from birth to adolescence. Now, children are said to reach developmental milestones in how they play, learn, speak, behave, and move. We normally think of growth and development in 5 stages. Now, first, infancy from birth to 1 year, then toddlerhood from 1 to 2 years, early childhood from 2 to 6 years, middle childhood from 7 to 12 years, and adolescence from about 13 to 19. So in today's show, we'll track development from infancy to childhood. And to help us understand what parents can expect in the first year of life, we're joined by 3 special guests. First up on my right is Dr. Melody de Jager. Dr. Melody de Jager is an educationist and founder of the Mind Moves Institute and also founder of the Baby Gym. She'll tell us more about that just now. And then we have Professor Lorna Jacqueline, who's a developmental pediatrician from West University and is also based at the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital in Johannesburg. And also Nadia Kusak, who is an occupational therapist who specializes in sensory integration. Ladies, welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Now, we talk about development. Perhaps let's start with you, Prof. Jacqueline. Clearly, in my introduction, I said that development doesn't start, in the period just before the child goes to school, but actually goes as far back as during pregnancy. Can you just take us through what a parent's responsibility is during pregnancy to ensure that development of that young unborn child is supported?
So, a pregnant family, so mom and dad,
right.
I think it's important that dad's involved.
Yeah.
that mom and dad want the child,
right.
And it's attaching to that unborn baby. And if you care about that baby before it's born, you're going to look after yourself. You're going to see you don't drink, you don't smoke, you eat the right things, you don't go out late at night. So you're already starting in pregnancy to care for your child and to love the child. And that'll carry through into when the baby's born. Mm-hmm. It'll, plan for your pregnancy. You'll attend antenatal clinic.
Right.
If you need antiretrovirals, you make sure that about your status. Mm-hmm. So it's all of that already saying this is a little human being that I love and care for, and really setting the groundwork, doing the foundation for the development. And if you get that right. Mm-hmm. It's going to go well. If that goes wrong, it's worrying. And I really worry about teenage pregnancies because a lot about caring about your child is feeling your child, talking about your child. And for teenagers at school, this is very, very difficult. So I really think as a community, knowing how many teenage pregnancies there are, and this is going to your last talk, but really that we look after our teenage mothers and support them so that they can attach to the unborn children.
I suppose the birth process itself is also quite important in terms of, how it affects development.
There's research done by Professor Justice Hofmeyer about 20 years ago, you might have read it, and he really emphasized the need for support of the mother when she's in the maternity home, that somebody's with her and looking after her, that she actually at that point feels cared for, which is very concerning because in our state hospitals that's not happening. The parents, the young mothers are not being supported through their pregnancy, and that worries me a lot, and I think it's something we as a community again need to be doing something about.
Absolutely. All right, let's just then say that here's this bundle of joy that's just been born. What can a parent expect in the first year? In other words, developmental milestones as we term them. Anybody can really participate.
Yeah. The most important thing is for the parent to understand that that child is born into a whole new world, and that that baby needs to be exposed to that whole new world in a very slow way. Bonding with the mother, being with the family, being protected from too many sounds, too many smells, too many visitors, things like that, because otherwise their senses, which is your sense of touch, your sense of smell or taste or hearing, those are the senses that actually develops your brain. So
we'll get back to what parents can do to support the children. But perhaps, Prof. Jacqueline, maybe let's just assume that the child is growing normally. What can parents expect, let's say, in the first month, the 6th month, and so on?
So we look at different areas of development. So a very young baby makes eye contact. So eye contact happens soon after birth, in fact at birth. Because your brain is actually wired to look at a face. So being a pediatrician, I often deal with where things go wrong. And it's that the baby will look at you, and a normal newborn baby will look at you. So if your baby isn't making eye contact with you, one already starts worrying. So it's eye contact, and this is the beginning of communication. And then it's making little sounds, the to and fro sounds, little cooing sounds. So if your baby's cooing, you coo, you already know the baby's hearing.
At about what stage?
So cooing starts at about a month that you get that you can get to and fro cooing. So you listen to the type of the cooing the baby makes. So children have to coo with a variety of sounds. If it's just monotonous noise, then you've got to worry about the hearing. So hearing screening should be done.
That's crucial.
Well, maybe let's get back to the motor part, the sitting, the crawling, and what have you. Nadia, do you want to take us through it?
So a newborn baby obviously can't do much. They have got some arm and limb movements, and as they develop, they start developing head control. So at about 3 months, if you hold them against your chest, you'll see that little head starts moving up, and they can start turning to sound or to look at things. Between 3 and 6 months, they start rolling. By 6 months, they're usually rolling from the tummy onto the back and from the back onto the tummy again. At 3 months, they can lie on their tummy and push up with their arms, and also again, they're starting to look. By 6 months, they're reaching for toys. Between 6 and 9 months, they sit. Between 9 and 12 months, they start crawling, and between 9 and about 18 months, they start walking.
So that's in a normal, ideal sense.
Yes.
Now, what should be the red flags? When should parents start worrying if they don't see any of these things that you've mentioned happen?
I think two things happen. You get either spectrum. You either have a very passive baby that is unresponsive, it doesn't move much, it doesn't cry much, because movement and crying is a baby's way of talking initially. So that's a red flag. And on the other hand, is if it's too much. If it's erratic movement and continuous crying, that's a red flag too.
Talk about continuous crying. I suppose, and I'm not saying this from a man's perspective, all that babies, people often say, all that babies do is just cry, 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 cry. How do parents manage, or how should parents manage crying in babies?
Crying is so important because it's the way the baby communicates with you. So if you're in touch with your baby's emotions, a mother will say, my baby's crying because it's hungry, because it needs a nappy change, because it wants attention. So you can actually listen to the cry and understand what your baby's crying about. However, I think you've got to put yourself in the position, you're a young parent, you don't understand your baby's communication. the baby's just screaming, you becoming uptight, the baby's, get into the cycle of I don't know what to do, and that's when things go wrong. Yeah. So I think the message that I've got to get out there is that if you feel I could shake this baby, and I think as a parent we all reach that point. Yeah. We all reach that point, you know, where you're so desperate. I think that one's got to say, I'm out of control. Phone Childline, phone your mother, phone anybody, phone your best friend, put the baby down, get outside. Because unfortunately, and it's in the news yesterday, about children that are getting hurt because parents just lose control.
Yeah. And they're tired.
And they're tired.
The parents are tired because they don't sleep.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how we can help this development in this child in the first year of life. Perhaps, you know, from an OT's perspective, what do you do? What do you advise parents?
One of the biggest things that I tell parents is to just involve their children in whatever they do.
Right.
So what I mean by that is that you don't need to have a toy store in your house. Yeah. You can use face cloths, cotton wool, the garden, you can use your kitchen utensils. Just let them explore and play with whatever it is you have in your home, and give them the opportunity. Yeah. And sometimes they need to be taught what to do. So show them, and it doesn't matter if it's wrong. There isn't really a wrong. So if they take the pot and they bang it instead of mixing something, it doesn't matter. But just give them the opportunity to explore.
Okay, we're just going to pause at that level. And after the break, we now focus on the second year of the baby's life. Please stay with us.
Should marijuana be legalized in South Africa or not?
The legalization of dagga is a no to our country. Look at the rate of rape in our country because of people that
but you can't say dagga makes people
that
get
are under
raped
the
then.
influence of dagga.
When a young man comes to you and says, I'm having a problem with dagga, do you send him to jail?
We don't send them to
Then you already concede that you agree that prohibition is not the answer, Ms.
because
Lopanga.
our aim is to help them.
As is ours.
It is you helping them by giving them dagga. How are you going to control this? Just give me a chance. Because if you cannot control it now, as the CYP of South Africa, we say no to the legalization of dagga. No matter what you study, no matter what you tell me, I say no.
Watch Newsroom with me, Eben Janssen, weekdays at 9 a.m. on the SABC News channel.
Okay, we continue our discussion with our guests, Prof. Lorna Jacqueline, Dr. Melody Diyaga, and Nadia Kusak. And we're now into the second year of a baby's life. Before we start, ladies, there's one important thing that I thought, we need to talk about, and that's nutrition. And, the importance of breastfeeding and when is the right time to introduce solids and that sort of thing. Any takers?
Oh, yeah. Breastfeeding is hugely important.
Right.
Hugely important from a bonding perspective, from a sensory perspective. Dr. just mentioned the eye contact, because the moment you hold your baby, you're making eye contact. Right. But the moment you breastfeed, you swap your baby to both arms. And the moment you swap the baby to both arms, baby becomes aware of both sides of the body. So it's hugely important, and that's the start. Decent sucking is the start of pronunciation and speech later. It's preparation for clear speech later on.
That's interesting.
Very. And it's innate. People innately, when you feed your baby properly and there's good suction, you're automatically, without knowing it, you're preparing the tongue, the cheeks and the lips for very good pronunciation later on.
And again, we're looking for red flags always when the parents feel concerned.
Yeah.
So the baby that can't do that,
Yeah.
that's a red flag.
Okay.
And it's got implications for speech development. So many of these children who can't feed, who then have to go into a little cup have got speech problems. So we've got to be aware that we've got to be intervening from a speech therapy point of view. So, you know, you can be picking up on things at a very early stage.
And how long should they be breastfeeding for?
Well, I would suggest as long as the parent feels comfortable.
Right.
So what happens is your breast milk changes as your child changes. So in the beginning, it's very nutritious. As they become more in solids, it changes a little bit because the needs of your child changes.
Okay.
So I would suggest anywhere from 6 months until a year and a half, if that's what the parent is comfortable with.
Okay. Staying with you.
Yes.
Now, second year of life.
Yes.
The baby starts moving around and
Yes.
becomes a little more mobile. Take us through what parents can expect in this period.
Sure. When a child is so young, you actually see the growth is almost exponential.
Yeah.
So between 1 and 2, you see a little child, they start running, they can start climbing up and down stairs, they'll start climbing jungle gyms, some of them can start pushing on the push bikes. They'll get into everything.
Yeah.
They're inquisitive, they're exploring, language starts developing. So between a year and 2 years, I think language starts between like 1 to 2 words. I think by 2 you've got about 50.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of language, as well as emotional development.
Yeah.
Now the child starts to want things their own way, doesn't want to share, gets more demanding. So there's quite a lot of growth that happens.
And really just picking up on the language, this is such an important period for language development and for parents to talk to their children so that whatever they're doing, they say, look, mommy's doing this, to have them in the kitchen and talk about different things. And we'll go on to school readiness, but this is actually school readiness.
Well, talk about talking to children. People often say that parents shouldn't use baby language when they're talking to their children. Take us through that.
You know, I don't think what language you use matters. I think the fact that you're talking to the child is what matters. The child, if you're speaking in an adult, a very sophisticated adult language, it's more difficult for the children. So you need to simplify your language, but parents do it normally. You normally say, come, mommy's going out. And that's what a 2-year-old will understand. So it's a natural thing to abbreviate your sentences to the level that the child will interact. Because if you have a 12-word sentence, the child's going to ignore you. It's for them. So you kind of, if you want them to do it, you will cut down your sentences to the right language.
So you simplify, but you don't necessarily have to use baby words. You don't have to say botty and blankie. You can say, please get your bottle, instead of, please go get your bottle in your bedroom via the kitchen. So you simplify, but you don't necessarily have to use the baby words. Especially I think with children who might have language issues later on, it's almost like learning a second language. So if they've learned botty for bottle, and then now you're trying to teach them that it's actually bottle, it can get a bit difficult.
Can I add something about multilingualism in our country? Because so many children are exposed to mother and father speaking different languages. The only thing that's very important there is that whatever language you speak the same language consistently. So not only is it important that the baby hears a language, if you want a baby to be included in a culture, that baby needs to learn the language. And exposure to a second language is perfect in the early years, just given that it's one person, one language.
Fascinating. Now, one thing that's very close to my heart is that of physical activity, I suppose, in adulthood. But I mean, obviously, some of the habits that we instill from a very early age are quite important.
Absolutely.
Now, you founder of the baby gym. Tell us about that.
The thing is, I'm a researcher that watches, and I've been watching babies for many, many years. And it doesn't matter if you watch boys or girls, and if they're in South Africa or Africa or Europe, they all move in exactly the same way. Because the movements that a baby makes in the first year wires different parts of the brain. So there's a direct correlation between the movement that the baby makes and what happens in the brain. And that's why the developmental milestones are important, because it's actually beacons of brain development. So as much as movement is important in the first 2 years, learning to stop is equally important. Because children are hyperactive, they don't have the stop button. They have the movement button. And you need to teach both. You need to teach them, give them opportunities to move. That's why young children can't sit still for unlimited period of time. They need to move to learn.
Nadia, what practical advice do you give to parents in terms of, in this period specifically, in terms of how they can encourage movement and what sort of activities should they be doing with their kids?
Sure. Again, encourage them to just participate in whatever you're doing at home and limit TV. And iPad and cell phones, because even the 2-year-old knows how to.
We're going to come back to that in the next segment, because that's a big one.
That's a big one, So taking them for walks, going to a playground if you don't have a garden at home, finding a jungle gym, even just finding, if you've got an old couch, letting them climb up and down the couch. Independence, letting them climb up and down stools versus picking them up all the time or carrying them all the time. Let them participate.
Now, children in this period, obviously they want to explore the world, and they touch, they feel, they grab things, they put into their mouths, and because of their activity. Then comes the question of safety in the home. Your comment?
It is incredibly important. As much as we want to encourage movement, you need to also make sure that the movement is safe. And for that reason, we watch what we do with our doors, the lower ones. You watch if there's a tablecloth hanging, because if they want to get up, they pull on anything, which everything that's on that table may land on them. You want to cover if there's an electrical plug, you need to make sure those things are safe. But sometimes you must always remember, a child is born into a community, so the child needs to learn to operate in that community. And that's why the movement that a baby makes in the first, or a child, in the first 2 years is real things. Washing, use pegs, you understand, but learn to use it safely. People often say, but my child will be hurt. You know what, we've got 4.2 million pain-sensitive structures in the body. We are primed to feel pain, because pain actually teaches you, stop this, rather do something. When a little baby is learning to sit, and they topple over, it's not a huge height, so they don't get seriously injured if they're playing on the floor, because that's where children should be all the time. But that pain triggers something in the brain that says, I don't want that again. I need to do something. And you know what happens next time? The hand starts going out to self-protect. So we need to encourage activity and participation in everyday life, but we simultaneously need to teach them how to do that safely. And that needs parent interaction.
Very interesting. Yes.
I just really want to come in again at a medical level, because we're seeing almost an epidemic of rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency, in our children. So we're seeing a number of little children who are falling and breaking limbs when they shouldn't be doing it. And I think one's got to look at the communities that we have around us. And in the Hillbrow, Berea, Yeovil community, children are not being exposed to the sun anymore. And therefore their vitamin D levels are very low. And the children, if children go to clinics, they get their vaccinations, which is critical. They'll get vitamin A, which is shown to help with infections. But we're not giving them vitamin D. So I'm encouraging my parents to please take your child into the sunshine, try and get sunshine exposure. Otherwise, in this very normal physical activity, which you watch there, the child just falls over and breaks a limb. So I think that's another important thing.
Very important points that, Okay, we're just going to go for a quick commercial break, and after the break, we now move to the preschool years. Please don't go anywhere.
Had there been harmony between the South African government and the Nigerian government, which came through in the latter stages, the bodies would have been repatriated quicker.
Now, we always get a lot of criticism as a public broadcaster, but just how far can media go in terms of reporting the facts?
Watch Media Monitor Sundays at 9 a.m. on the SABC News channel.
Zoom into Africa. This is Angola. The president is Mr. José Eduardo dos Santos. Angola got independent from Portugal on 11 November in 1975. The population is more than 20 million people. One of the major languages spoken is Portuguese. Monetary unit is the kwanza.
Groei, maar ik is een kapst. Ja, de paar bezig. Kom.
A grandmother in Hector-Spruit in Mpumalanga has made an impassioned plea for her two grandchildren.
13-year-old Tulani Dlamini and 21-year-old Hlonipile Vilani were taken
away by a stranger who allegedly promised them better education in England. But the two recently called their grandmother. They told her they're in Malawi.
It's 100 years since the start of the Great War, and today 14 South African World War I heroes, all recipients of the Victoria Cross, were honoured.
The Ring of Memory carries the names of 600,000 soldiers who died in the region.
Primetime News, daily at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Even though some refer to the late toddler stage as the terrible twos, now the preschool years are most exciting for both parents and children. Let's learn more about these stages and help parents in terms of what we can expect in these ages of between the ages of 2 and 5. And we're joined by another special guest, Anita de Keris-Wagner, who is an educational psychologist in Johannesburg. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Right. Now, the child is growing. 2 years old, starts running around. Maybe let's start with you, Nadia, in terms of development of milestones. Okay. I mean, on the motor side, you can take us from 2 right up to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this age, between 2 to 5, across all milestones, whether it's fine motor, gross motor, speech, emotional, there's a lot of development and a refinement of skills.
Right.
So with regards to gross motor, the running becomes more controlled, they trip less, they're able to climb high, climb more, they start learning to ride a bicycle. With fine motor skills, they start learning to, if they haven't already, to feed themselves with a spoon, with a knife, with a fork, drink from a cup independently. They learn to dress themselves, wash themselves, do buttons, do zips. So there's lots that happens.
Right.
Language, sure, they learn colors, numbers, shapes.
Right. What about balance? Just staying on the motor.
Yes.
Balance and coordination and that sort of thing. Yeah?
So between the ages of 2 to 5, they learn to use both hands and both legs together in a coordinated way, so they can do skills like throw balls, kick a ball, those kind of things. Their balance, I think by the time they're 5, they should be able to balance on one leg for between 5 to 10 seconds, whereas a 2-year-old can't really do that.
So, I mean, talking about that, what should be the red flags? What should parents be concerned about? Again, I think I'm going to refer to what Melody said earlier, too little or too much. Okay.
So if they're not exploring or doing enough of anything, so they're not learning to run, they're not wanting to do any gross motor activity, they'd rather sit and play, or if they're too busy and doing too much, so they're climbing on the jungle gym and they're not realizing that if they jump, it's too high, it's dangerous. So the extremes of both is usually a good sign.
Okay, Prof.
So physical development, people always think, oh, the child is just playing. It's it's not a valuable time.
Right.
But one must realize when a child is climbing under something, they're learning the concept of under, or they're learning the concept of on top.
Yeah.
You learn with your body. So you're developing concepts with your body all the time.
Right.
It's essential for maths to do maths later on, to be able to have a spatial orientation, to be able to see the world in sequence. So all of this, play is the way children learn. So they're learning about all the concepts which we then going to sit them in a classroom and teach them. They've actually learnt this when they've been playing outside in the jungle gym, socializing with their friends. It always worries me when nursery schools don't want the children are just playing. We don't want to just let them play, we actually teach them. That's not what those early years are about. They're about, you must be learning through play. And if
so
children,
it's purposeful play,
it's purposeful, but children should just be having fun.
Right. Yes.
You know, once little ones are feeling as if somebody's teaching them, I must do it, it must be done in this way, I must follow the rules, it's no longer play for them. And then you'll see children becoming resistant. I don't want to be working. I want to just be having fun. So we must encourage nursery schools to allow free play.
Perhaps I could just comment very briefly on the psychological aspect of those 3 years, because what's so important for children at that stage is that separation from home and the development of relationships with both the peer group and other adults. And if children don't manage to do that, then they're going to have trouble through the school system.
All right.
So
Let's just pause for a while and go to Kimberley and speak to Sipho. Hello, Sipho.
Hello, how are you?
We're good. How are you?
I'm good.
Your question, please.
Doc, my concern is basically when a 3-year-old go to crash, do you really need to be concerned about the infection that he might get when she goes to creche, and what should you use actually to guard against any infections that she might get when she's there?
All right. Thank you very much, Sipho. Very important question. Prof, creches are usually called viral exchange bureaus.
and that's important as well.
Yeah.
So it's the stage when the child's building up its immune system. So you must make a decision. Do you want your child to build up its immunity in the creche, or do you want it to build up its immunity once it gets to school? So the children have to go through the stage of having infections and building up immunity, but as parents we must be sure the children are nutritionally sound, so that the infections are transient and the body's using the infection. So again, getting their vitamin A at the creche, being well nourished, looking after their nutrition and their health in general.
We're talking about nutrition, and the immune system. You hear most people talk about supplements that should be given to children over and above what they eat. Your comment?
So it depends. So I'm saying that in Hillbrow, if children cannot be exposed to the sun, I'm recommending that parents give them vitamin D, which is a supplement.
All right, let's go to Centurion and speak to Thandi. Hello, Thandi.
Morning, how are you?
We're good, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I've been paying attention to the show and I've been learning very interesting stuff.
Yes.
I've got a 2-year-old daughter.
Right.
She's actually 2.5, but she's not speaking very well. So I don't know, is it something that I should be alarmed about and consider taking her to a speech therapist?
What do you mean she's not speaking well?
She says a few phrases, and a lot of relatives of mine are starting to say maybe she'll never talk.
Right.
You know, in the black community, people expect certain things at a certain age.
All right, just hold on there. Anybody wants to ask a specific question?
So speech delay is a very important marker for many things.
All right. Okay, Thandi, you'll listen then to the responses from our experts. Okay, thank you very much for your question.
So speech delay is a very important marker for many conditions. It's not specific, but I do think Thandi is really a good mum to be picking it up and to be concerned. And a speech therapist is a good place to start. So, in fact, they're the best. They're the expert on speech development.
Yeah.
And they can pick up whether it's a hearing deficiency or some other developmental problem.
Let's hear from Anita, in terms of speech development.
I think she commented on alarmed. I don't think she needs to be alarmed, but certainly concerned.
Yeah.
About 2.5, most children are saying a few phrases, and they've got a vocabulary for single word things, so they'll say plate and whatever. And really to do a lot of work around developing speech, reducing TV time because it discourages speech development, doing lots of reading, lots of talking, and lots of listening by the parents, letting the child talk.
Well, the one thing I picked up from the question was relatives are starting to complain, which suggests to me that she is comfortable or not at the stage where she wants to start panicking, but it's other people. Your comment or your advice in this instance?
I always think we should listen to what other people have to say, but we know our child best. And so that parents need to have that confidence that they really know the child. If she feels concerned, she should definitely take it up. If the child's language doesn't develop regularly and there's not the addition of new words all the time, then one needs to be concerned.
Okay. So on that note, I think that we will stop and go for a short break. Now, how will you know that your child is ready to start school? We'll look at that after the break. Please stay with us.
Prominent names have been mentioned at the Arms Deal Commission, among them Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Tony Blair and Tony Georgiades.
Terry Crawford Brown has been making the loudest noise, from taking the president to the highest court in the land to grilling witnesses in the first phase of the hearings.
Commissioners have adopted a tough stance with witnesses, compelling them to back up claims and produce evidence.
Do you know those MPs? I know some of them, but really, sir, I would not think it was appropriate to disclose their names publicly.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
Cameroon's economic capital, a unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.
If I'm telling you, you don't like it, I call it defeat.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
The dilemma of when a child is ready to start school isn't new and has become more complicated. The age at which South African children are allowed to start school doesn't necessarily coincide with their intellectual and emotional resources. Most question that parents normally ask themselves is, what age must my child start school? What if my child has special educational needs? The age of a child entering grade 1 is age 6, turning 7 in the year of admission. Many schools conduct school readiness tests to determine if a later admission would be in the child's best interest. Some parents who are prepared and their kids are age appropriate couldn't wait to put on the uniform on their kids.
I'm actually very much excited because even though she was here last year on grade R, but I'm happy because she made it to grade 1 and she was the best student last year. She got an award, so that is why I'll keep on encouraging her to study.
Most parents think of readiness in terms of academic skills, whether a child can hold a pen, sit quietly, listen to and understand instructions. But nowadays, School readiness has much to do with emotional readiness as with cognitive ability. Emotional readiness involves having the confidence and self-esteem to cope with all kinds of situations. Teachers are now concerned about the involvement of parents in the journey of their kids' learning.
The learning starts in grade 1, but it continues up until grade 12. So it's very, very important that parents participate and learners also learn and get a very solid foundation in grade 1. Because whatever they learn in grade 1, it takes them also to till grade 12. Because even if they do get the distinctions in grade 12, it's because of the solid foundation that they gained in grade 1.
Unfortunately, you cannot judge if your child is school ready by age. Child development should be on par with the development of other children of the same age. With development, we look at different aspects thereof, such as emotional, social, physical, intellectual. Language development should be considered before deciding that the child is ready to get into a uniform and attend school.
Isn't that cute, eh? It is said that a third of all our thinking skills are developed by age 6. So the question is, what are those skills that should be developed to enable a child to start grade 1? And to help us with these questions, we still have our guests. We have Melody Diaga back, and we still have Prof. Lorna Jacqueline and Nadia Kusak. Okay. Ladies, we know the school regulations around the fact that, grade 1 can only be started when the child is 6, turning 7 in that year. But before we get to the issue of age and other skills and whatever, there's often the confusion between school maturity and school readiness. Can you perhaps take us through those two, please?
School readiness is about a load of skills, physical skills with the body, skills emotionally, skills with your friends, and intellectually, which is also associated with language development. That's school readiness. So you expect a child to be able to develop all those skills because before they're really ready to sit still and to learn to read and write. That's a hugely different world. You must remember the world of reading and writing is flat. The world that the child learns in initially is three-dimensional. It's real. So a child must be very good at bridging the gap. You need skills to be able to bridge the gap between the concrete real world and the world of paper. Maturity is something you can't push. It's like an avocado pear. You can hold it, if you buy it on the street corner, it's hard as a rock. You can push, but you can't make it ripe. Maturity is like ripeness. You can't push it. If you push it, you bruise it.
So the correct term, I would imagine, is school readiness. Basically. All right. Nadia. There's often talk of formal tests that you guys do to determine whether a child is ready for school or not. Take us through that, please.
Yes. Well, there's two different ways of looking at it. So I know that you can have kind of like a short school readiness assessment, which is more just a screening tool to determine whether your child is on the right place, or you can go through a full, either an OT assessment or through a full educational psychology assessment. So the screening assessment is appropriate for children who there aren't any significant concerns and you just want to make sure their skills are on par, and you do the others if there are more concerns and you want to know exactly what's going on.
But when do you do them?
So it depends on the school, but usually in the last half or the last 6 months of the year when they're in grade 0 or grade 00, so the year they turn 5 to 6.
So can I please come in there? What is incredibly important is from an early age that a child is actually assessed from an early age, because what often happens, and I'm sure you'll agree, is they only start assessing in grade R, the year before grade 1, around about June, and then there's a huge developmental delay. You can't breach that in 6 months. Then you're going to push the child to get ready. So from the earlier years, the 3-year-old child needs to develop certain skills. So the 4-year-old when that child is 4 years old, they can build onto those skills. At the 5 to 6 year old class, they can continue to build. So the screening must actually be done continuously from the age of 3.
Yeah. You see, the dichotomy for most people is, if there are these tests that are conducted to determine whether or not a child is ready for school, let's just say that the child qualifies by age to be in grade 1. and you conduct these tests that determine that the child isn't ready for school. What happens in that instance?
In that instance, and this is exactly what they were talking about earlier on, then you need a full screening. You need to find out what is the real problem. Is it something to do with a physical development? And then the OT is absolutely the right person to talk to. Is it emotional or social? Because then the educational psychologist is the right person. Is it language? Because then the speech therapist is the right thing. Is there a health problem? Then the health practitioner is the right person. You understand? We need to figure out what is preventing this child from thriving.
So these are the children that I'd see. So my experience, contrary to what was mentioned in the video, is that we're not screening. That children are actually not. I mean, I wish all children had school readiness tests. That would be an enormous step further. And that when children, and then the next step is what do we do with these children? And yes, it depends on the problem of the child, what we do with the child.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Nadia, last 30 seconds. Let's just talk about parents who insist that they want to take their kids to school very early. What are the consequences?
I think the most important thing is that a child must be allowed to develop at their rate.
Right.
If you push a child to go to school too early and they don't have the skills, you can impact on concentration, and then they hate school for life, and then all learning can be influenced. So it can have long-term consequences.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because...
That's fine.
Sure. It's been so much that we needed to cover and such important topics. Unfortunately, time is very limited. It's on that note, sadly, that we come to the end of our show today. Share your views and comments on Facebook by going on to www.facebook.co.za/SABC Health Talk. You can also follow us on Twitter, by the way, Twitter @SABC Health Talk. Email us your views at healthtalk@sabc.co.za. Join us next week as we continue our discussion on child development, this time focusing on the period from school-going age to adolescence. And by the way, you can watch the repeats of this show at 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. tonight. Or you can simply get it on your YouTube channel. Okay, and from myself, Dr. Solomon Daung, and the rest of the team, it's a very warm goodbye to you. Enjoy your weekend, and to our lady guests, thank you very much for participating in the show.